Welcome to the Kentucky History Channel, where we strive to bring you all the Kentucky history content you want and you deserve. Kentucky is a part of all of us, and we plan on covering all the history we can, from Pike County to Fulton County, from Louisville to Harlan. Here on our YouTube channel, you can find many videos dedicated to different events, people, governors, and places in Kentucky. There's something for everybody. While you're here, if you like the channel, hit the subscribe button and the notification button so you get notified anytime new Kentucky history is available. And if you want to support the channel, we have a Patreon page as well, or patreon.com/kyhistorypod. You've probably heard about Daniel Boone, but what about the rest of the frontiersmen who came to Kentucky and settled? That's what we want to bring to the Kentucky History Channel. The stories of the untold, the stories of those forgotten. One thing to expect on our channel is great Kentucky content. Some stories that you've never heard of. The Night Riders, who began in western Kentucky. Bloody Monday, the riots in Louisville. The assassination of Governor Goebel, the only governor ever assassinated in the United States. Stories from all over Kentucky, stories that are unforgettable once you've heard them. You can find out who counties in Kentucky are named after and how your county got started. From beginning to end, we plan to document every county in Kentucky, all 120. Reach out to us on all of our social media platforms. Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and also leave a comment on one of our YouTube videos. You can also check out our podcast episodes. You can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and many more. Welcome back to the Kentucky History Podcast. I'm your host, Jameson Cable, and we are continuing talking about Daniel Boone, one of the most known frontiersmen in the history of America, probably. And we're going to talk about Daniel Boone's legacy and his life after Kentucky.
But of course, he does have the Battle of the Blue Licks in 1782.
Oh I kind of glossed over that. Let's talk about that real quick.
Yeah, and this is one of those times where Daniel is right. You know, they're pursuing a party of Shawnee, and Daniel realizes as they're getting closer, they're going up through eastern Kentucky, and what they're going to end up in what's now Robertson County, smallest county in the state. Mm-hmm. And the native tribes were very good at masking their trails. You break into small groups, you go in different directions, and these guys were doing none of that. And as these settlers pursued them, I mean, the Native Americans did everything except put a sign that said, "We're here," behind. And Boone said, "Something's not right. I really feel like there's a problem going on. I think it's some sort of trap." And at first, most men agree with him, including Hugh McGarry, who was from Harrodsburg, and he's accused. Maybe we should wait for Logan to show up with some troops.
That's right.
And he's accused of cowardice, and so McGarry is determined that will never happen again. So they get to the river, and Boone says, "We can't cross. There's going to be an ambush." And McGarry is credited with saying, and some people say it didn't happen. Any man that's not cowards follow me, or something to that extent. Yeah. Whatever is his actual words were, he encouraged the attack forward. And Boone is credited with saying, "We're all dead men," because you cross the river, and sure enough, it's an ambush. And that's where Boone loses Israel, Boone, son, in the retreat. And it was just a massacre for Kentucky. And of course, you can go up to Blue Lick State Park and see the monument and kind of get the museum of the lay of the ground. Mm-hmm. But it was probably the last major defeat for the Americans in the Revolution, because Cornwallis surrendered to Washington 2 years before. The Battle of Yorktown, 1780. So we're really just in peace negotiations with the British. And it's a tragic defeat for Kentuckians. And Boone was right. If they had listened to Boone, their lives would have been spared. So.
Yep. Didn't happen. And that's one of those sad, another sad and tragic moment whenever Boone was there, fighting side by side with his son, and he was shot, and I think he took him over and was able to hide him, and then come back and give him the proper burial. Um, but again, another tragic moment, but
Yeah.
keeps going. I don't know exactly what Isaiah's age would have been, old enough to fight, I assume,
Mm.
but I don't know. I don't know where off the top of my head.
I don't know how old Israel was. That's a good.
Israel. I said Isaac, I believe.
But I knew what you meant. Yeah, but he's yeah.
um,
So it's a tragic story because Boone ends up losing two sons and a brother
yeah,
during
yeah,
those formative years. But yeah, you're right. That kind of ends his time in Kentucky. He tries his hand as a businessman, not just with land speculation, but you mentioned up in Maysville, and it just really doesn't plan out for Boone. It's just not who he
yeah,
is.
um, yeah, and that goes to say, just he was a very good explorer, very good frontiersman, all those things credit, but he was not one, for the laws of man, I guess, to say it that way,
Mm.
government issues. He was not really that involved. You think about Benjamin Logan, who ran for governor, um, James Harrod, who was a delegate for things. He was not, as I guess, as much into the politics either. But Boone never really was one that was seeking any kind of government office. I mean, he did not
Right.
pursue those goals or those avenues at any point. I think he might have been sheriff of some place at for some meager time. Um, but yeah, then he meets up with Filson, right, and becomes a legend.
Yeah, that's right. But Filson's writing a history of Kentucky, and it turns out to be the first history of Kentucky. And of course, there's not really history, so it's more of a travel brochure, lengthy
Yeah,
travel brochure. But it's a neat read. It doesn't take very long. It's not that many pages. And he describes the weather and the land and stuff. And then in the back of that, he tucks, the story of Daniel Boone, and
mhm,
in no way discrediting what Boone did, because Boone was a fantastic frontiersman. But really, Boone's achievements were pretty much on par with, like we've said, Kenton or
mhm,
Logan or
mhm.
Lincoln,
Squire.
Benjamin Lincoln, Squire, James Harrod, so many of these guys. But the reason Boone stands out is because this is written and it becomes a bestseller. People in Europe are reading this. It gets translated in other languages because it's the
Yeah.
equivalent. If you live in Europe, it's the equivalent of reading a journal from someone who settled the moon or something. It's so far
Yeah,
away. It's so far,
yeah.
and Boone really becomes an international celebrity. It doesn't benefit him personally, of course.
No,
He ends up
no.
leaving Kentucky, but yeah, everyone knew Daniel Boone
Yeah,
thanks
there
to
you go.
Filson.
Good old Filson. There's the whole Filson Historical Society now, that is based off of John Filson's work, I guess, and
Mhm.
um, all that good stuff. But yeah, he gets a book written about him. He does. He then, after, I guess, his I want to say failed attempt at running a tavern and all that sort of thing, he moves to Missouri, or out of Kentucky. Um, and that's where our story ends. So that's it. We're not. No,
Yeah,
no, we will continue. We
thanks
can
for
just
that.
keep talking. Yeah. um, but yeah, he goes to Missouri. Does he also go to? I thought there was a time that he also went to Louisiana, maybe. Um,
Okay, it could be, and I
and
didn't know that, but I
and
wouldn't be surprised.
I might be thinking, but he was out of Kentucky
Yeah.
and moved around, but he ends up in Missouri. He lives there. Rebecca dies there, and then eventually Daniel dies. I think a few years later. Rebecca, um, it may have been two years,
Mhm.
um, 2 years, but he was 85 when he died. So I mean,
Was that
a
1830?
long
Something like that.
1820,
1820.
1820 when
That's
he
right.
died.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, a long life. I mean, to think about that, a long, long life. Um, I mean,
And
85 is old for that time. Very old.
85 is old for someone living in a nice little cottage on the eastern seaboard, much less going through what Boone went through.
Yeah.
And but even there,
But
his
yeah.
reputation grows. That's where he gets painted, his picture painted. There are
Yep.
rumors that he reached the Rocky Mountains, which I don't quite believe, but
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
reputation was just so great that these stories circulated because of what he
Mhm.
accomplished.
Yeah. Yeah. And he dies. He's buried there. Um, but then he is moved back to Kentucky. Thankfully.
Yes,
Thankfully. And if you're listening to Missouri, sorry, that's just the truth. You got to deal with it.
got him. Yeah,
But like his body was moved back to Kentucky, and oh man, I shouldn't have brought that up because now the date is going to leave me. Um, but it's brought back, and you can go visit that in Frankfort Cemetery. The video that I did about him, just about Daniel Boone, it's about a 5-6 minute video. It has a lot of footage of that, and so for a lot more pictures too of just Daniel Boone's life, Rebecca's gravesite. There's a good picture of Daniel Boone kind of mourning the passing of Rebecca on graveside. That's really cool. I'm going to show a few more of these pictures. There's one from the siege of Boonesboro, and then here's another one of just Daniel Boone depicted of battling a Native American. If you notice, he's drawn with a coonskin hat in that one, so
yeah,
that is not accurate. He did
right.
not. David Crockett, I believe, is the one who wore the coonskin hat.
One
Maybe.
of the broad felt hat kept the sun off you and the rain off of you.
Yeah, yeah.
That was the way to go.
Um, so we kind of touched on this a lot, but um, as we've said, Daniel Boone kind of through the biography and what biography it was, becomes this legendary person. Um, he's known all across all the way across the pond
Oh
in
yeah,
England. Um, translating his books translated in um, different languages, so that's pretty impressive. Um, but that's the one thing. The question is, where do you hold Daniel Boone at? I mean, he did a lot of things, a lot of great things for Kentucky, um,
right.
even the nation as a whole. Um, but when you think about it, like we said, a lot of the things he did, so did Simon Kenton, so did Squire Boone, um, James Harrod, um,
Right.
Benjamin Logan, and many, many others probably that just didn't have a town or were the third city in Kentucky or whatever it may be, the Bryants at Bryan Station
Sure.
in Fayette County. How do you judge Boone? I mean, what's your thoughts?
You know, you have to give Boone credit for, I think, for being Kentucky's spokesman. And at the very beginning, I said an ambassador, but spokesman might be a better term. Many of these frontiersmen, when they went back home, they reached out to people they knew or acquaintances. When Harrod comes down, he brings some of the people that live in his county. He brings people that he had traveled with on earlier expeditions. So it's a close knit group of folks.
Yeah,
Boone, through his work with Henderson and later on just bringing families to Kentucky, people trusted him. Boone's
yeah,
name was known in other places. And he became that symbol of, the frontiersman who was courageous and who was willing to, try things and go out on a limb. And that helped him enter into legend. And ironically, it's sad in a sense, though. Boone becomes a symbol of a period of Kentucky history that's not going to last. Kentucky is not
hmm
going to be a frontier state forever. The Kentucky of 1800 is vastly different from the Kentucky 25 years earlier when he
yeah,
founds Boonesboro.
hmm
And there's a book by Stephen Aran called "How the West Was Lost," and it talks about how that frontier, um, you know, atmosphere and environment slips away. And there are some people who rolled with it. Isaac
yep,
Shelby, his first home in Kentucky was a little lean-to that he'd built. He ends up becoming the first and fifth governor.
yeah,
He changed with the times. Herod disappears in 1792, but at that point he's been on the board of trustees for a town. He's well respected. He's got hundreds of acres. He had made the transition to
hmm
farming, and so many of these people made it, but so many did not. And I think
yeah,
the fact that Boone leaves Kentucky is a sign that the times are changing.
hmm and goes back to Boone's, one of his big mottos: if I can see the smoke of somebody's chimney, it's time to move on. And
Right.
I kind of feel that way as well because he adapted to the area around him, as in I'm moving away to where I'm comfortable, over into
Yeah.
this land, away from everybody else. I don't want to be involved in all this other. I'm going to use the word drama, but all these other issues and so forth. He's comfortable in the woods, and so forth. I created a video a while back about the top 5 settlers of Kentucky, and you know, which means nothing. It's just my talking. But Benjamin Logan being 5th, George Rogers Clark being 4th, or I
Oh,
said
yeah.
settlers, frontiersmen. James Harrod being 3rd. I'm sorry. Daniel
I'll
Boone
take it.
being
Top five. I'll take it.
Daniel Boone being 2nd, but then I put Simon Kenton being 1st, mainly because Simon Kenton saves Boone's life.
Yeah.
Um, but but really, I mean, and all those people, they all played a very important role. But why would I pick Simon Kenton over Boone? Well, Boone. I feel like Boone left. Boone left,
Yeah.
as in, I'm moving on. You know, Kentucky has changed. It's no longer what it is. I mean, if you think about in 1820, Henry
Oh,
Clay
yeah.
was in office. You know,
Right.
Lexington was a thriving city. Louisville was thriving. Kentucky was thriving as a whole state as far as population, uh, growth, commerce, all that stuff.
Right.
It was the place to be. I mean, James Monroe comes over to visit the president. It wasn't the Kentucky that Boone had came for and came to love.
Yeah.
So in that sense, he left because Kentucky was changing. Kentucky the state was changing, and I understand that. Not bashing him or anything like that. His
Oh, sure.
accomplishments are beyond. Um, but that's one thing. Simon Kent, I know that Simon Kent moved to Ohio and stuff like that as well. Um, but I do feel like there is that legend of Daniel Boone that sometimes overshadows um,
Yeah.
maybe reality, or maybe just people's one. I mean, there's the Daniel Boone National Forest. Everybody in Kentucky, it's kind of like Abraham Lincoln. Every county in Kentucky wants to claim something about Abraham Lincoln. Well, it's almost with Boone. They want to claim something about Boone as well.
Right.
Um, I mean, if you tell somebody from Pike County that Daniel Boone crossed into the Cumberland Gap first, they're going to be quick to say, no, that ain't right. Uh, but it's that claim to a legend, I guess. And you know, I mean, I guarantee you, putting a title on a video or a podcast that says Daniel Boone is going to get a lot more views, a lot more listens, and so forth, as opposed to another frontiersman. But
Well, it's funny you say that because, like I said, of course, being in Harrodsburg, we've got the fort, we've got Shaker Village, and we have all these things there that are part of Kentucky history. But people will tell you, they say, Daniel Boone spent the winter in a cave, and it's marked on maps, because even though you have all this other stuff, you've got to have Boone.
yeah,
And I think that symbol of him as this pioneer, when we're doing the Wild West in the 1950s, and people love that, and you've got all these Gary Cooper movies and stuff, which are awesome.
mm-hmm.
But you also get the Daniel Boone series, played by Fess
Yeah.
Parker. And, that's not accurate in any way, shape, or form. But it symbolized, America was going on to a new frontier. We were thinking about landing on the moon. We do that in 1969. I mean, we've turned to space. We have entered a brave new world after World War II. And we viewed ourselves very much as that symbol of freedom in the world. And there were fears of the Soviet Union and the Cold War. And I think that's one reason that show played so well. Boone is brought back up as the kind of American we all aspired to be, in a sense. He was brave, and he wasn't afraid to try something new. And, while I could say the show, not quite accurate by a long shot, but that spirit that Boone had transcended the centuries.
Yeah, yeah, and that's I mean, very well said, man. And whenever you read these stories, I've heard all those stories many times, and then I pick up the book that the treasure, Blood and Treasure, and you just hear them again, and it just captivates you again. You're like, man, it's amazing. I mean, it's amazing him, and what Simon Kenton did, and some of the others, just what they did is, well, I mean, I don't know why people haven't made movies about them, full on movies. I know there was a TV show, but Man, I mean, I guess that's just me. I would love to go watch them. Maybe everybody else is like, I don't really want to go watch that.
I would love that. I think that'd be awesome. And
Yeah.
because it took a special kind of person to do what they did, so why not celebrate that?
And I think about, and these are just comparisons, of course, but think about Simon Kenton, Daniel Boone, and so forth. I mean, they wanted to be out in the wild. They wanted to. It was their passion. I mean, and everybody has a passion, and that was their passion, and it helped out a lot of people. So,
Yep.
Wherever you may stand, I guess, in your opinion of Daniel Boone, I don't ever hear too many people saying bad things about him.
Right.
He's pretty much well liked, well known, well respected. I mean, his accomplishments are way more than I'm going to ever achieve or anything like that.
I'm with you.
Yeah. So, but still a founder of Kentucky. Needless to say, wherever you may put him on your ranking or your chart or say how important he was definitely a founder of Kentucky. That is 100% accurate, and that credit deserves that credit if anything, because if him and all those other crazy frontiersmen and brave people wouldn't have done what they did, I wouldn't be here for sure. So
that's right. That's me either.
Yeah. So, and you may not live in Kentucky, but that is a good chance it might have been the fact as well. I mean, these people kept moving west, and that's just the way it went.
If you live west of the Appalachian Mountains, without Boone and those guys, your life would be drastically different today.
Yep, definitely. That wraps, I guess, pretty good discussion, I believe, on Daniel Boone. I hope the listeners have enjoyed it. I've enjoyed talking to you about it again. I know, no insult by any means, but nice to talk about something besides the War of 1812. Plenty of good information there. But we'll keep going. And anything else?
I think that's it.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. And we'll see you next time. Welcome to the Kentucky History Channel, where we strive to bring you all the Kentucky history content you want and you deserve. Kentucky is a part of all of us, and we plan on covering all the history we can, from Pike County to Fulton County, from Louisville to Harlan. Here on our YouTube channel, you can find many videos dedicated to different events, people, governors, and places in Kentucky. There's something for everybody. While you're here, if you like the channel, hit the subscribe button and the notification button so you get notified anytime new Kentucky history is available. And if you want to support the channel, we have a Patreon page as well, or patreon.com/kyhistorypod. You've probably heard about Daniel Boone, but what about the rest of the frontiersmen who came to Kentucky and settled? That's what we want to bring to the Kentucky History Channel. The stories of the untold, the stories of those forgotten. One thing to expect on our channel is great Kentucky content. Some stories that you've never heard of. The Night Riders, who began in western Kentucky. Bloody Monday, the riots in Louisville. The assassination of Governor Goebel, the only governor ever assassinated in the United States. Stories from all over Kentucky, stories that are unforgettable once you've heard them. You can find out who counties in Kentucky are named after and how your county got started. From beginning to end, we plan to document every county in Kentucky, all 120. Reach out to us on all of our social media platforms. Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And also leave a comment on one of our YouTube videos. You can also check out our podcast episodes. You can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and many more. We're always seeking to find more Kentucky history so we can bring it to you. The viewers, the listeners, we want all the stories and all the events from Kentucky's great history to be told and shared everywhere.